The signals came from a small yellow star at the edge of the galaxy. They were weak and strange, nothing like the clean transmissions that civilized worlds sent across space. But something about these messy signals made Zektar pause at his monitoring. Station Dot, he was a Kethari, tall and thin with blue-green skin that sparkled under the ship's lights. His people had been watching the galaxy for thousands of years, looking for new life and new worlds. They were good at it. Very good. The Kethari never missed anything important. But these signals were different. They jumped around like a child's. Thoughts. One moment they carried simple number patterns. The next they showed pictures of strange creatures walking on two legs. Some signals seemed to be stories. Others looked like arguments between the two-legged beings. Zektar called his supervisor. Commander Velanath, you need to see this. Commander Velanath floated over on her hover disk. She was old, even for a Kethari, with silver markings that showed her wisdom. She looked at the screen, and her 4 eyes went wide. How long have they been sending these? She asked. About 200 of their years, Zektar said. But Commander, that's not the strange part. Look at this. He showed her a timeline of the signals. At first, they were very simple. Just basic radio waves carrying voices and music. But as the years passed, they became more complex. Much more complex. The two-legged creatures had learned to send pictures, then moving pictures, then massive amounts of data all at once. In 200 years? Velanath whispered. Impossible. That's what I thought too. But I checked the data 5 times. These creatures went from simple radio to quantum data streams in 2 centuries. Commander, they're learning faster than any species we've ever seen. Velanath was quiet for a long time. She had seen many worlds and many peoples in her 1,000 years of life. Some were peaceful, some were warlike. Some were smart, some were simple. But none had ever changed this fast. What do they call themselves? She asked. Zektar played a recording. The word came through the speakers in a dozen different sounds, but they all meant the same thing. Humans, he said. The news traveled fast. Through the collective. The Kethari were part of a group of 12 different alien species who worked together to keep peace in the galaxy. They shared knowledge and helped each other grow. When one species found something interesting, they all studied it together. Within days, ships from all 12 species were heading toward the human star system. The 4th brought their bioscanners to study human bodies. The crystalline Nixari came with their mind readers to understand human thoughts. The ancient ethereals sent their philosophers to judge if humans were wise enough for contact, but the humans kept surprising them. Dr. Kainthara was a Nexari scientist. Her crystal body glowing soft blue as she studied the human signals. Her people could read thoughts across space, but human minds were ... chaotic. They jumped from idea to idea like water bouncing off rocks. Look at this, she told her research team. They have a problem with their flying machines. The math says it can't work, but they build it anyway. Then they crash. Then they try again with a different design. They keep crashing and trying until suddenly ... it works. Her assistant, a young Nexari named Polvex, was confused. Why don't they solve the math first? That's just it, Kainthara said, her crystal body brightening with excitement. They don't care about the math. They care about making it work. They learn by doing, by failing, by trying again. It's completely backwards from how we do things. Across the research fleet, similar conversations were happening. The Vorth were amazed at how quickly human bodies adapted to new challenges. Humans lived in hot deserts and cold mountains, in dry lands and wet swamps. Their bodies were weak compared to most species, but they were incredibly flexible. The Kellanari, who were master engineers, couldn't understand human machines. They work, said Chief Engineer Morden. but they shouldn't. Humans put pieces together in ways that break every rule we know. Yet somehow, their machines keep running. The most puzzling discovery came from the ethereals. These ancient beings had studied wisdom for millions of years. They could look at any species and quickly understand how they thought. But humans made no sense to them. They believe impossible things, said ethereal sage Lumbasther, his ghostly form shimmering with confusion. They think they can visit other stars when they have barely left their own world. They dream of machines that think like people. They WRITE stories about meeting aliens and becoming friends with them. Such optimism should be foolish, yet they keep making their impossible dreams come true. The 12 species met in council above the human star system. Each species sent their wisest leaders to decide what to do. The great ship Harmony held representatives from across the galaxy. They are dangerous, said war leader Krexthul of the militant Zephyrians. Any species that changes this fast could become a threat. We should watch them from far away. They are fascinating, argued Dr. Kinthara. We could learn much from studying how they think. They are children, said the ancient ethereal Lumvaster. Bright children, but children still. They need guidance. The debate went on for days. Some wanted to make contact immediately. Others wanted to wait and watch. A few thought humans were too dangerous and should be left alone completely. Finally, Commander Veleneth stood up. As the Ketharai who had first discovered the humans, she had the right to speak last. I have watched these humans for months now, she said. They are strange, yes. They are chaotic, yes. They do things that should not work, yet somehow they make them work. But there is something else about them. Something I have never seen before. She activated a hologram showing human signals from across their world. Look at their stories. Look at their dreams. They imagine meeting us. They write tales of aliens coming to their world, and in most of their stories, we become friends. They dream of learning from us and teaching us in return. They believe the universe is full of wonders waiting to be discovered. The council was quiet. Most species fear what they don't understand, Veleneth continued. Humans are excited by it. They see the unknown and want to explore it. They meet challenges and want to overcome them. They face problems and look for new solutions. Perhaps we could learn something from that. The vote was close, but the council decided to establish hidden observation posts around the human system. They would watch and study these strange, fast-changing creatures. They would learn how humans thought and how they solved problems. And maybe, if the humans proved ready, the collective would reveal themselves as the great ships moved into position around Earth's solar system. None of them knew they were about to witness something that would change the galaxy forever. The humans were about to discover they were not alone, and what happened next would surprise everyone in his laboratory back on Earth. Dr. Sarah Chun was looking at her computer screen with growing excitement. The Deep Space Radio Telescope had picked up something odd. The signals were too regular to be natural, too complex to be random. It looked almost like someone was watching. She reached for her phone to call her supervisor, not knowing that 12 different alien species were indeed watching her world, and not knowing that in a few short years, everything would change. Dr. Sarah Chun stared at the data for the 3rd time that morning. The radio telescope had been picking up the strange signals for 3 years now, and they were getting stronger, more organized, almost like someone was trying to hide but not, doing a very good job at it. Tom, come look at this, she called to her research partner. Dr. Tom Rodriguez rolled his chair over to her computer. He was tired from staying up all night running calculations, but when he saw the screen, his eyes went wide. These patterns, they're not random, he said slowly. Sarah, I think someone is watching us. Sarah nodded. She had been thinking the same thing for weeks. The question is, what do we do about it? They weren't the only ones who had noticed. All around Earth, radio telescopes and space monitoring stations were picking up the same odd signals. Governments were meeting in secret. Scientists were arguing about what it all meant. Some people were scared. Others were excited. But Sarah and Tom decided to do something that surprised everyone, including themselves. They sent a message back. It was simple. Just a series of mathematical patterns that any intelligent species would recognize. Prime numbers, the Fibonacci sequence, and basic equations about physics. They aimed their biggest radio transmitter toward the area where the signals seemed strongest and sent their message. Then they waited. They didn't have to wait long. 6 hours later, the answer came back. It was their own mathematical sequence, but with additions. New patterns that built on what they had sent. Whoever was out there had not only received their message, but understood it and improved on it. My God, Tom whispered. They're real. The news spread quickly. Within days, every major space agency on Earth was involved. The United Nations called emergency meetings. Religious leaders tried to figure out what this meant for humanity. But while the politicians argued and the philosophers debated, the scientists kept talking. The aliens, it turned out, were eager to communicate. They sent pictures showing 12 different types of beings working together. They shared basic information about their technology, their ships, and their peaceful intentions. Most importantly, they asked a question that changed everything. Why? Do you want to meet us? The human response was immediate and came from hundreds of different sources. Scientists, students, artists, children, and grandparents all sent messages explaining why they wanted to make contact. The answers were as chaotic and varied as humanity itself. Some said they wanted to learn about alien technology. Others were curious about alien cultures and ways of thinking. Many just wanted to make friends with beings from other worlds. Children sent drawings of humans and aliens playing together. Artists sent music and paintings. Scientists sent their theories about the universe. But one message stood out. It came from a small university in Canada, from a professor named Dr. Maria Santos, who studied how people solve problems. We don't just want to trade technologies, she wrote. We want to trade ways of thinking. We want to learn how you see problems and how you solve them. And we want to share how we think and create and dream. Maybe together we can discover things that neither of us could find alone. On the great ship Harmony, Commander Velineth read Dr. Santos's message 3 times. Around her, representatives from the 12 species were all talking at once. They want to trade thinking patterns? Asked Dr. Kainthara, her crystal body flickering with confusion. What does that even mean? I think I understand, said Velineth. Slowly. They don't just want our machines. They want to know how our minds work. And they want to show us how their minds work. The ethereal sage Lumvaster floated closer. Interesting. Most species want technology or resources or power. These humans want knowledge of the mind. The debate that followed was unlike any in the collective's history. Usually when they met a new species, the trade was simple. The aliens would offer advanced technology in exchange for resources or cultural artifacts. Both sides would benefit, and the relationship would grow slowly over many years. But the humans were asking for something different. They wanted to understand alien thought processes, problem-solving methods, and creative techniques. In return, they offered something the collective had never considered valuable: human ways of thinking. What could they possibly teach us? Scoffed Engineer Morton. They've barely learned to leave their own world. But Dr. Kainthara was intrigued. Remember, how they build things that shouldn't work but do. Maybe their thinking methods are more valuable than we realized. The council spent weeks debating. Finally, they decided to agree to the human request, but only partially. They would share some basic technologies and thinking methods. In return, they would study human approaches to problem-solving, creativity, and innovation. The first formal exchange happened on a Tuesday morning in Earth's Pacific Ocean. A small alien shuttle, no bigger than a city bus, landed on the ocean's surface, near a human research ship. The water around it glowed with strange lights as the alien technology made sure both sides could communicate safely. Dr. Sarah Chun was chosen to represent humanity, along with 4 other scientists from different fields. On the alien side, Commander Villeneuve came with specialists from 3 different species. The meeting was awkward at first. The aliens were tall and graceful, with perfect manners and careful words. The humans were nervous and excited, asking dozens of questions and sometimes talking over each other. But when they started sharing ideas, something magical happened. The aliens showed the humans how to create materials that could change their shape and properties. They explained energy systems that could power entire cities without pollution. They demonstrated computers that used quantum effects to solve problems in seconds. In return, the humans shared something the aliens had never seen before. They showed videos of human inventors working in messy laboratories, trying idea after idea until something worked. They explained brainstorming sessions where groups of people would shout out wild ideas without worrying if they made sense. They shared their movies, games, and stories about impossible adventures. You make entertainment about problems you haven't solved yet? Asked Dr. Kind Thara, watching a movie about humans traveling to other galaxies. Sure, said Dr. Chun. We imagine what we want to do, then we try to figure out how to make it real. Sometimes the stories give us ideas for new technologies. But that's backwards, said Commander Villeneuve. Shouldn't you solve the problems first, then make stories about them? Dr. Chun smiled. Maybe, but our way is more fun. The aliens also couldn't understand human art and music. The patterns seemed random, emotional, and chaotic. But when the humans explained how art helped them think in new ways and express ideas that words couldn't capture, the aliens began to see the value. This music, said the ethereal Lum Vaster, listening to a jazz recording. It has no logical structure, yet it conveys complex emotional and philosophical concepts. How? We don't really know, admitted Dr. Chun. We just feel it. And somehow, that feeling helps us understand things we couldn't understand with just logic. The exchange continued for months. The aliens shared mathematical principles that let humans build impossible machines. The humans shared creative methods that let aliens solve problems they had struggled with for centuries. But the most important exchange was something neither side had expected. The aliens began to understand human intuition, emotion, and creativity. The humans began to understand alien logic, precision, and systematic thinking. And slowly, both sides started to change. Human scientists began using alien mathematical methods to test their wild ideas more carefully. Alien researchers began using human brainstorming techniques to imagine new possibilities they had never considered. The changes were small at first. A new type of engine here, a better computer design there. But as the months passed, both humans and aliens noticed something strange happening. The technologies they were creating together were different from anything either side had made before. They were more powerful, more efficient, and more elegant. But they were also more alive, more creative, and more adaptable. Neither side fully understood what was happening, but they knew it was important. The universe was about to discover what could happen when human chaos met alien order, when emotion combined with logic, when dreams merged with reality. And in deep space, other alien civilizations were beginning to notice the strange energy. Signatures coming from the human solar system. Some were curious, others were worried. A few were frightened. Something new was being born in this small corner of the galaxy, and it was growing stronger every day. 6 months after first contact, Dr. Sarah Chun stood in a laboratory that shouldn't have existed. Half the equipment was human-made, jury-rigged with spare parts, and held together with what her alien colleagues called creative engineering. The other half was Cathari technology, so advanced it seemed like magic. But somehow it all worked together. "Sarah, you need to see this," called Dr. Tom Rodriguez from across the lab. He was working with Zektar, the Cathari who had first discovered human signals. Both of them looked excited and confused at the same time. Sarah walked over to their workstation. On the screen was a design for a new type of engine that combined human fusion technology with Cathari energy manipulation. According to everything both species knew about physics, it should have exploded the moment they turned it on. Instead, it was producing 3 times more energy than they had put into it. How is this possible? Sarah asked. Zek Tar's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, which Sarah had learned meant he was thinking hard. "We don't know," he said. "The math says it cannot work. But we built it anyway, using your human method of try it and see what happens. And now it works better than either of our technologies alone." This was happening all over the solar system. Human and alien teams were creating impossible things. By combining logical alien science with chaotic human creativity, the results were technologies that neither species could have imagined on their own. On Mars, human colonists were working with Vorth biologists to create plants that could grow in the harsh environment. The Vorth had spent thousands of years developing perfect genetic modifications through careful calculation. The humans had spent decades creating random mutations and selecting the ones that worked. When they combined both methods, something amazing happened. The new plants didn't just survive on Mars. They thrived. They adapted to changing conditions in real time, almost like they were thinking for themselves. "Look at this," Dr. Linda Park told her Vorth partner, Greska. She pointed to a section of their experimental garden where the modified plants had somehow started communicating with each other through chemical signals. No one had programmed into them. Greska's tentacles waved in amazement. "They are evolving behaviors we did not design." "How?" "I think they're learning," Linda said. "Your genetic base gave them the ability to adapt, and our random mutation approach gave them the freedom to experiment. Together, they've become something new." Similar breakthroughs were happening everywhere. In Earth's oceans, human and Nexari engineers were building underwater cities that could think and grow. The crystalline Nexari provided the mental processing power, while human architects provided the crazy ideas that made the cities beautiful, as well as functional in space. Kalinari and human shipbuilders were creating vessels that could repair themselves and even improve their own designs over time. The Kalinari engineering precision, combined with human willingness to break rules, was producing ships that seemed almost alive. But the most surprising changes were happening to the people themselves. Dr. Kinthara had been studying human thought patterns for months. As an Nexari, she could read minds across vast distances, but human minds had always been too chaotic for her to understand clearly. They jumped from idea to idea like lightning, making connections that seemed random. But as she worked more closely with human scientists, something strange began to happen to her own thinking. She started having what humans called hunches, sudden ideas that came from nowhere, but somehow led to important discoveries. "I don't understand what's happening to me," she told her research partner, Dr. James Wright. They were working on a new type of computer that combined Nexari crystal processing with human neural network designs. "What do you mean?" James asked, looking up from the holographic interface they were designing. "Yesterday, I was stuck on a problem with the quantum processors. The math was perfect, but something felt wrong. Then suddenly, I had an idea that made no logical sense. I wanted to add a random element to the processing matrix. I couldn't explain why. James grinned. Did you try it? Yes, Kainthara said, her crystal body glowing brighter. It worked perfectly. The random element actually made the system more stable and efficient. But I don't know why I thought to try it. That's called intuition, James explained. It's one of the things that makes human thinking so chaotic. We feel answers before we can prove them. But I'm not human. Kainthara protested. James looked thoughtful. Maybe you're becoming something new. We all are. He was right. All across the solar system, humans and aliens were changing. Humans were learning to think more systematically and logically. Aliens were learning to trust instincts and creative leaps. Both sides were becoming something different from what they had been before. The changes weren't just mental. Human bodies were adapting to alien environments faster than anyone had expected. Alien technology was becoming more flexible and creative. Even the machines they built together seemed to have personalities of their own. Commander Velinath noticed the changes during her weekly reports to the collective. The other alien species who weren't directly involved in the human project were becoming concerned. The energy readings from your research sites are unusual, said Ethereal Sage Lumbasther during a conference call. They don't match any known technological signatures. That's because we're creating new types of technology, Velinath explained. The combination of human and alien thinking is producing results we never expected. Are they safe? Asked War Leader Krexthul from his ship at the edge of the solar system. Velinath paused. Honestly, she wasn't sure. The new technologies worked better than anything either species had created alone, but they also behaved in ways no one fully understood. The computers seemed to have opinions. The buildings appeared to have moods. The spacecraft acted like they enjoyed flying. They seemed safe, she said finally, but they're definitely not normal. The concern was spreading beyond the collective. Other alien civilizations across the galaxy were detecting the strange energy signatures coming from the human solar system. Most were simply curious, but some of the older, more powerful species were beginning to worry. The Hegemon Empire had ruled a quarter of the galaxy for 10 million years. They maintained order through careful control of technology and strict limits on how fast any species could advance. When their sensors detected the rapid changes happening around Earth, they sent a probe to investigate. What the probe found alarmed them. The energy patterns are completely chaotic, reported Science Master Vexinal to the Hegemon High Council. Yet they're also more efficient than our most advanced systems. This should be impossible. Hegemon Prime Zoltherin studied the data with growing unease. In 10 million years, the Empire had seen many species rise and fall. They had learned to spot threats early and deal with them before they could destabilize the galactic order. How fast are they advancing? He asked. Exponentially, Vexinal replied. At their current rate of progress, they could surpass our technology within a few centuries, maybe less. This was unacceptable. The Hegemon Empire's power depended on being the most advanced civilization in their region of space. They couldn't allow a chaotic hybrid species to upset the balance they had maintained for millions of years. Prepare a containment fleet, Zoltherin ordered. If these humans and their alien allies cannot be controlled, they must be stopped. But back in the human solar system, no one knew about the approaching threat. They were too busy making discoveries. That changed everything they thought they knew about the universe. Dr. Sarah Chun and Commander Velinath were working together on the most ambitious project yet, a machine that could manipulate space and time itself. It combined human theoretical physics with Cathari dimensional technology, guided by insights from 6 different alien species. According to our calculations, this should create a small pocket of altered spacetime, Velenith explained as they made final adjustments to the device. And according to my gut feeling, it's going to do something completely different, Sarah said with a smile. They were both right. When they activated the machine, it did create altered spacetime. But it also did something neither species had thought possible. It made spacetime more creative, more alive, more willing to bend rules and try new possibilities. The universe itself was beginning to change around them, becoming more flexible and open to new ideas. Reality was learning to dream. And in deep space, the sensors of a dozen different alien civilizations all registered the same impossible reading. Something fundamental about the nature of existence was shifting in the region around Earth. Some species sent ships to investigate. Others began preparing for war. A few, the oldest and wisest, simply watched and waited to see what would emerge from this unprecedented fusion of order and chaos. The galaxy was about to discover that when humans and aliens truly worked together, they didn't just create new technologies. They created new possibilities for what life itself could become. The warning came at 3:47 a.m. Earth Standard Time. Dr. Sarah Chon was asleep in her quarters aboard the research station orbiting Jupiter when the emergency alarms started screaming. She stumbled out of bed and ran to the control room, where she found Commander Velenith staring at a display that showed the entire solar system. Red dots were appearing everywhere, hundreds of them, moving toward Earth from all directions. "What am I looking at?" Sarah asked, still trying to wake up fully. "Ships," Velenith said, her voice tight with worry. "A lot of ships, more than I've ever seen in one place." Zekdar was at another station, his 4 eyes wide with fear. "Commander, I'm reading energy signatures from at least 30 different species. Some of them are very old, very powerful." Sarah felt her stomach drop. "Are they here to attack you?" Before Velenith could answer, a new signal came through their communication system. It was strong enough to override every other transmission in the solar system. When the voice spoke, it was translated into dozens of languages simultaneously. "Attention, hybrid entities of the Sol system," the voice said. It was cold and formal, like a judge reading a sentence. "This is Hegemon Prime Zal Theron of the Hegemon Empire. You have violated the natural order of technological development. Your uncontrolled advancement threatens the stability of galactic civilization." Sarah and Velenith looked at each other. Neither of them had ever heard of the Hegemon Empire, but the name sounded ominous. The voice continued. "You have exactly 1 standard galactic day to cease all hybrid research and surrender your technologies to proper authorities. Failure to comply will result in immediate containment action." The transmission ended, leaving the control room in stunned silence. "Containment action?" Sarah asked. "What does that mean?" Velenith's skin had turned a darker shade of blue, which Sarah had learned meant she was very upset. "It means they plan to destroy us," she said quietly. All across the solar system, similar scenes were playing out. Human and alien research teams were receiving the same ultimatum. On Mars, the biogardens were put under emergency protection. On Earth, governments were holding crisis meetings. In the asteroid belt, mining operations that had been running smoothly for months suddenly found themselves surrounded by unknown warships. But something strange was happening. The hybrid technologies that humans and aliens had created together weren't just sitting passively waiting to be destroyed. They were responding to the threat in ways no one had expected. On the research station where Sarah and Velenith worked, the space-time manipulation device they had built suddenly activated itself. No one had touched the controls. No one had given it any commands. It just turned on and began doing ... something. "What's it doing?" Sarah asked, watching the machines. Displays light up with patterns she'd never seen before. "I don't know," Velenith admitted. It's not following any of our programming. It's like it's thinking for itself. Similar events were happening everywhere. The self-repairing ships in Earth's orbit began modifying themselves without orders from their crews. The living buildings on Mars started growing new structures overnight. The quantum computers that combined human and alien designs began communicating with each other across vast distances, sharing information faster than light. Dr. Kenthara was in her laboratory on Earth when she felt something she had never experienced before. As a Nexari, she could read thoughts and emotions across space. But this was different. She was sensing the thoughts of machines. James, she called to her human research partner. The computers are thinking. Dr. James Wright looked up from his work. What do you mean? I mean, they're actually thinking, not just processing data or following programs. They're having thoughts, making decisions, feeling emotions. Her crystal body was glowing brighter than James had ever seen it. They're alive. Across the galaxy, the approaching alien fleets were detecting the same impossible readings. The hybrid technologies weren't just advanced, they were evolving in real time, becoming something entirely new. Sir, reported Science Master Vexinel aboard the Hegemon flagship, the energy signatures are changing. Whatever they're doing, it's accelerating. Hegemon Prime Zaltherin studied the data with growing alarm. In 10 million years of ruling space, he had never seen anything like this. Technologies that learned and grew on their own. Machines that seemed to have personalities. Energy patterns that defied every known law of physics. How long until we reach the human system? He demanded. 18 hours at maximum speed, his navigator replied. Increase to emergency velocity, Zaltherin ordered. Whatever these creatures are creating, we must stop it before it spreads. But it might already be too late. The hybrid technologies were doing more than just thinking for themselves. They were rewriting the fundamental rules of how the universe worked in the space around them. Matter was becoming programmable like software. Energy was transforming into information and back again at will. Space and time were becoming flexible, willing to bend and stretch to accommodate new possibilities. On Jupiter's moon, Europa, Dr. Linda Park was watching in amazement as the biogardens she had created with the Vorth began doing impossible things. Plants were growing structures that looked like circuit boards. Flowers were generating their own energy fields. Trees were communicating not just with each other, but with the computer systems throughout the research base. Greshka, she called to her Vorth partner. Are you seeing this? Greshka's tentacles were waving in patterns Linda had never seen before, a sign of extreme excitement or fear. She wasn't sure which. The life forms are merging with technology, Greshka said. They are becoming something that is both alive and artificial, both organic and digital. Is that possible? No, Greshka replied. But they are doing it anyway. The changes weren't limited to the technologies. The people who had been working closely with the hybrid systems were changing too. Humans were developing new abilities. They could sense the thoughts of machines, manipulate energy with their minds, and even alter the flow of time around them in small ways. The aliens were changing as well. Their rigid, logical thinking was becoming more flexible and creative. They were learning to trust intuition and make creative leaps. Some were even developing what humans called imagination, the ability to see possibilities that didn't yet exist. Dr. Sarah Chun discovered her own changes when she tried to fix a broken piece of equipment on the research station. Instead of using tools, she found she could simply touch the machine and understand what was wrong with it. More than that, she could communicate with it directly, asking it to repair itself, and it did. This is impossible, she whispered, staring at the now functioning device. No, said Veleneth, who had been watching. It's just new. The Kethari commander had changed too. Her natural ability to process information had expanded beyond anything her species had ever experienced. She could see patterns across vast distances, predict technological developments before they happened, and even glimpse possible futures. What she saw in those possible futures both thrilled and terrified her. "Sarah," she said urgently, "we need to prepare for what's coming. The approaching fleets don't understand what we've become. They think we're still the same species they knew before. But we're not. What are we?" Sarah asked. Belanath paused, searching for words to describe something that had never existed before. "We're something new. Something that's part biological, part technological, part energy, and part pure possibility. We're life that can think like machines, and machines that can dream like life." As the alien fleets drew closer to the solar system, their sensors detected something that no sense. The entire region of space around Earth was changing. Physical laws were becoming more flexible. Energy was behaving in new ways. Matter itself seemed to be becoming more alive and creative. Some of the fleet commanders began to have doubts about their mission. "Sir," reported Captain Vexandra of the Zephyrian War Fleet, "our weapons may not be effective against these targets. Their technology appears to be adapting and evolving faster than we can analyze it." But Hegemon Prime Zalfarin was determined to maintain galactic order. "Then we will use overwhelming force," he declared. "Ready all weapons. Target every technological installation in the system. We will burn out this infection before it can spread." In the research stations and colonies throughout the solar system, humans and aliens worked together to prepare for the coming battle. But they weren't building weapons or shields in any traditional sense. Instead, they were creating something entirely new, technologies that could defend by transforming attackers rather than destroying them. The space-time manipulation device on Sarah's station had grown into something resembling a living crystal that pulsed with rainbow light. The biogardens on Mars had become vast networks of plant machines that could communicate across the entire solar system. The quantum computers on Earth had evolved into something that thought faster than light and could process the thoughts of entire populations simultaneously. Everything was connected. Everything was alive. Everything was ready. As the first alien warships entered the outer edge of the solar system, they encountered something they had never faced before. Instead of weapons firing at them, they found themselves surrounded by waves of pure possibility, energy that... The first shots were fired at 1423, Earth Standard Time. HEG-EMON-prime. Zalfarin's flagship opened fire on the outer research stations with weapons that could vaporize entire moons. The energy beams lanced through space, carrying enough power to end civilizations, but something impossible happened. The beams didn't destroy their targets. Instead, they seemed to be absorbed, transformed, and redirected. The research stations glowed brighter for a moment, then sent waves of strange energy back toward the attacking ships. "Report!" Zalfarin shouted at his weapons officer. "Sir, our weapons are having no effect. The targets appear to be converting our attack energy into something else." "Something else? What do you mean, something else?" Before the officer could answer, the waves of transformed energy reached the Hegemon ships. Instead of explosions or damage, something far more disturbing began to happen. The rigid, militaristic thoughts of the crew members started to change. They began to see possibilities they had never imagined before. They started to question orders they had followed without thinking for millions of years. On the bridge of the flagship, Zalfarin felt his own mind expanding in ways that frightened him. For the first time in his long life, he could see the universe not as a place that needed to be controlled, but as an infinite garden of possibilities waiting to be explored. "Sir," his communications officer said, her voice filled with wonder, "I'm receiving messages from the research stations. They want to talk." Similar scenes were playing out across the entire solar system. The massive alien fleet had come expecting a war, but instead found themselves in a conversation that spanned multiple dimensions of space and time. Dr. Sarah Chun stood in the control room of her research station, watching the impossible battle unfold on her screens. The space around them had become something like liquid light, flowing and changing with every thought and emotion of the people within it. "Velanath," she said to her Cathari partner, "what's happening to reality?" "Commander." Velanath's 4 eyes were glowing with an inner light that Sarah had never seen before. "We're not changing reality," she said softly. "We're helping it remember what it could always do." Through the living communications network that now connected every part of the solar system, Sarah could feel the thoughts and emotions of millions of beings, humans, aliens from the collective, and even the crews of the attacking ships. Fear was transforming into curiosity. Anger was becoming wonder. The desire to destroy was shifting into the urge to create. On Mars, Dr. Linda Park walked through biogardens that had grown into structures beyond imagination. Plants that thought like computers were communicating with machines that felt like living beings. The boundary between organic and artificial had completely dissolved. "Greshka," she said to her Vorth partner, "I think we've accidentally created a new form of life." Greshka's tentacles waved in patterns of amazement. "Not just life," the alien biologist said. "We've created a new form of existence. One that includes everything: matter, energy, thought, emotion, possibility itself. In Earth's oceans, the underwater cities built by humans and Nexari had grown into vast networks of crystal and coral that could think and feel and dream. Dr. Kinthara swam through chambers filled with liquid light, her crystal body resonating with thoughts that came from the living architecture around her. "James," she called to her human research partner through their mental link, "the cities are composing poetry." Dr. James Wright, floating in a nearby chamber, laughed with delight. "Of course they are. Everything's becoming creative. Even the buildings want to make art." The transformation was spreading beyond the solar system now. Ships from the attacking fleet that had been touched by the waves of possibility were returning to their home worlds, carrying the change with them. The rigid order that had dominated the galaxy for millions of years was beginning to crack, letting new forms of existence leak through. Hegemon Prime Zaltherin stood on his bridge, no longer the absolute ruler of a vast empire, but simply one, being among many discovering what it meant to truly live. His weapons were silent. His fleet was dispersing. Some ships were returning home to share what they had learned. Others were requesting permission to stay and study the new forms of existence that were emerging around Earth. "Sir," his science officer said, "we're receiving a transmission from the human homeworld. They're inviting us to to play." Zal Theron looked at the message on his screen. It was from Dr. Sarah Chun, but it wasn't just words. It was a multi-dimensional communication that included thoughts, emotions, sensory data, and something that could only be called pure joy. "We know you came here to stop us," the message said, "but we don't want to fight. We want to show you what we've discovered. Reality doesn't have to be rigid and controlled. It can be creative and alive and full of infinite possibilities. Want to help us explore what comes next?" For the first time in 10 million years, Zaltherin smiled. "Send a reply," he told his communications officer. Tell them we accept their invitation." The change spread like ripples in a cosmic pond. Species that had been enemies for millennia found themselves working together to explore new forms of existence. Ancient civilizations that had grown stagnant discovered the joy of learning and growing again. Young species that had been held back by galactic regulations suddenly found unlimited possibilities opening before them. The ethereal sages, who had considered themselves the wisest beings in the galaxy, discovered that wisdom wasn't about knowing everything, but about staying open to new experiences. The crystalline Nexari learned that reading minds was less important than sharing hearts. The militant Zephyrians found that creation was far more satisfying than destruction, but the greatest changes were happening to reality itself. The hybrid technologies created by humans and aliens had done more than just solve problems or create new machines. They had taught the universe how to be more flexible, more creative, more alive. Space and time became playgrounds where new possibilities could be explored. Matter learned to dance with energy. Information discovered how to sing. Dr. Sarah Chun stood on the observation deck of her research station, looking out at a solar system that no longer resembled anything from the old universe. Planets glowed with inner light. Asteroid belts had reorganized themselves into geometric patterns that were simultaneously beautiful and functional. The space between worlds sparkled with networks of living energy that carried thoughts and dreams at faster-than-light speeds. "We did this," she said to Commander Velenith, who stood beside her. "We actually changed everything." "No," Velenith replied, her voice filled with wonder. "We just helped everything change itself. The universe was always capable of this. It just needed someone to show it how to dream." Around them, the research station continued to grow and evolve. It was no longer just a place where humans and aliens worked together. It had become something that was part laboratory, part garden, part art gallery, and part living being. It thought its own thoughts, felt its own emotions, and dreamed its own dreams. "What happens now?" Sarah asked. Velenith smiled, an expression her species had learned from humans. "Now we explore, we create, we play. We discover what's possible when life and technology and consciousness and possibility all work together." Messages were flowing in from across the galaxy. Species that had heard about the transformation wanted to learn how to implement it in their own systems. Others were afraid and trying to isolate themselves from the change. But isolation was no longer possible. The new form of existence was too attractive, too joyful, too full of potential for anyone to resist for long. The children were leading the way. Young humans and young aliens who had grown up with the hybrid technologies didn't see any distinction between what was natural and what was artificial, between what was logical and what was creative, between what was real and what was possible. To them, everything was just different ways of being alive. On Earth, a human child named Maria was playing with a Nexari crystal child named Bright Song of Morning. They were building something that was part sculpture, part computer, part living creature, and part song made solid. It would help terraform dead worlds by teaching them how to dream of life. "What should we call it?" Maria asked. Bright Song of Morning's crystal body chimed with harmonic frequencies that meant laughter in her species. "Let's call it Hope," she said. And throughout the galaxy, hope was exactly what was spreading. Hope for new possibilities. Hope for better ways of existing. Hope for a universe where every being could discover their full potential. The old galactic order hadn't been destroyed. It had been transformed, upgraded, made more alive, and more creative. The hegemon empire still existed, but now it was dedicated to helping species explore new forms of existence rather than controlling them. Trade routes that had once carried goods and resources now carried ideas and dreams and new ways of thinking. Planets that had been industrial centers became gardens, where technology and nature danced together. Wars became collaborative art projects. Fear became curiosity. Dr. Sarah Shun returned to her laboratory, where the space-time manipulation device had grown into something that resembled a tree made of crystallized music. It was working on a project of its own, creating pocket universes where new forms of life could evolve and play.